When you're a priest, you wear a lot of different hats, many of which they don't teach you in seminary. One of the ones that seminary did prepare me for is to be the diocesan liturgist. And now I share that with Dale Granfield of the Episcopal Church of the Mediator in Allentown. And part of my job is to help guide the liturgies that form us as a diocese. So whenever you're going to convention, if there's a liturgy, I had a hand in that. Now, I'm a prayer book Catholic, so we stick pretty close to the prayer book or the other authorized liturgies. But there are both pieces of music and scripture that are strongly associated with certain rites in the church. So when I have someone who's going to be ordained, for example, and they want to come into the Prince of Denmark March, which is associated with what? What, Walt? Where do we play the Prince of Denmark March? Weddings. And I have to smile and say, no, hun, it's not your this is not your wedding to Jesus. That was your baptism. Baptism is when we are wed to Jesus. Ordination's just an extension of your baptism because you have been called for that particular purpose. And, of course, we think of, with weddings, the love chapter from Corinthians, which was definitely not written for weddings. It was written for a very troubled congregation. Today's gospel reading is one of those readings. What do we associate this gospel reading with? Pop quiz, guys, come on. Where do you hear it? Funerals. Somebody said it. Funerals. The seminarian, of course. You're a ringer. My ringer in the choir. Funerals. In my Father's house, there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? We hear it is one of the most popular passages. Now, we don't get the extended dance version like we do today, which I love, because he says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, right? And then Philip goes, well, just show us the Father and we'll be satisfied. I mean, I can hear Philip getting just frustrated with all this symbolic talk. And Jesus is like, I think he did this. I think he smacked his forehead and said, Philip, have I been with you all this time? And you still do not know who I am. So we're doing this reading that's often associated with funerals at a baptism, which actually theologically is quite appropriate because we are going to baptize Evelyn June into the death of Christ, right? So death and resurrection is always contained within the rite of baptism. So I think it's particularly appropriate. Well, we often think of those dwelling places as, pie in the sky when you die, by and by. I'm going to walk those golden streets. Yeah, I know the Broadman hymnal. Okay. So you ex-Baptists, I know the Broadman hymnal. Well, what if it's not just about that? I read a commentary this week in Christian Century that intrigued me because it brought in Teresa of Avila, who was a mystic, lived in the 15th or 16th century, and she had ecstatic visions, and she wrote. She is considered one of the, doctors of the church. And Teresa of Avila wrote a classic spiritual piece that, when it was translated into English, became The Interior Castle. Anybody heard of The Interior Castle? No, it's a whole new one. Okay, good. Look up the English translation. It's probably available online. Okay? The Interior Castle is the English translation, but that's not a really great translation because in Spanish it's Las Moradas. Las Moradas. Las Moradas means the dwelling places. In my Father's house, there are many dwelling places. I think this might have been on her heart when she wrote this, and she wrote about a castle as one of several dwelling places for God. Of course, it's a metaphor, right? We like metaphor in the Episcopal Church. It's a metaphor for the dwelling place of God in our own interior, where we encounter the holy through our prayer life, through scripture, through the reception of the sacraments. And it changes us. But she also spoke about this intimacy with God in this interior dwelling place and the various interior dwelling places that is so intense that it can be frightening. Some folk don't really want to go inside the dwelling place because it's scary to encounter the living God. So it's a little safer if I just wander around the garden, right? I don't have to go in. I'll just wander around the garden outside, or maybe I'll stand on the street and peer over the wall. I might peek in the windows. Bishop Audrey told me when she goes walking in the morning, she said, I kind of check out and see whose lights are on. Might be looking for the lights being on. Because a lot of folk stay outside of those interior dwelling places because encountering the living God is a little too scary. But I want you to think about a time where the living Christ showed up in your life. Think about turning points when you had that aha moment. And maybe you thought it was you. That's always amusing. Oh yeah, I had this epiphany, or I had a big turning point, and change in my life, and it was all my idea. Let me suggest to you, it was a response to someone calling out from that interior castle saying, hey. It's a quiet, still, small voice. Those moments of inspiration that change our lives, those turning points in our lives, are when the Holy cries out to us, but often in a whisper from that interior dwelling place. See, the God of love longs to know you, longs to know every part of you, even the parts we'd like to hide, which is always amusing to me because as if we could hide from God. So I encourage you to think back about those times that were pivotal in your life. Today we have a pivotal day. Evelyn's being baptized. Now she may never remember it. I don't remember my baptism. I was about Evelyn's age when I was baptized. I never knew a time of being outside the community. And that's a gift of being baptized as a child. My husband was baptized later. He remembers his baptism. Whether you remember it or you don't, it is a pivotal moment when the Holy One is crying out from that interior castle and calling your name and inviting you to not just be satisfied with hanging out in the garden or peering over the wall, but to enter into that dwelling place that's not just in the heavens, but is in the center of who you are, because that is truly this place where God dwells. It's bidding from that place of love to reconnect to the one who will always, always love you.